Let's see. Oh, I have to remove and re-add Facebook for some reason. It's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see if that works. Yay. Okay.
Do you have a hard stop, Robert, real fast?
That's a great question. Let's see here.
And how long were you thinking?
Well, I normally we do these for about half an hour, and so
that's perfect.
I think that's good.
Okay, perfect.
All right, so folks are just filtering in. I want to say hi to everyone. Welcome to this CES edition of Tom's Hardware Live, where we are speaking with AMD's Robert Hallock. I'm Avram Pilch, editor-in-chief of Tom's Hardware, and we're joined by Deputy Managing Editor Paul Alcorn, world's leading CPU expert, and Robert Hallock from AMD. How are you doing? How is your CES going? Are you having trouble finding anything?
Avram, Paul, things are good. As we were talking pre-show, it's a little weird. I miss the people a lot more than I thought I would. Like, CES is very stressful. You're tired. You're constantly living on coffee and, I don't know, adrenaline. And you get home and you're just exhausted. You're like, I don't want to do this again. But I really miss the people. I miss seeing people like Paul. Can walk in, shake hands, have a coffee, have a beer. But on the upside, I'm not tired. So
yeah. Yeah, last time I think I saw you was the last time was at CES in the booth at a party. Then we had quite the discussion. That was pretty fun.
Yeah,
it is definitely different this year.
Yeah,
but we make do.
Yeah, exactly. So as always, AMD has some really spectacular announcements this year. What are some of the highlights, Robert?
Well, I'm a CPU guy, so for me, star of the show is the Ryzen 5000 series, now for mobile. I think we did really wonderful things in November on the desktop. Gaming performance, power efficiency, yada, yada, yada. Like kind of a laundry list of what people were looking for. But the big question we got at the time is, okay, cool, when can I get it in a notebook? And so here we are, a little under 3 months later, we're in a notebook. And it's a big deal. It's very fast. It's, I think, an easy to understand family. There's one socket, consistent model numbers. It's just pick your performance. So I think we've got some big things cooking in notebook this year.
I think with the transition to notebook, last time it took you guys almost a year to bring it from desktop to notebook, right?
Yeah.
And then this year, it's really fast. 3 months, you guys are already out in notebooks. It's really smart. Of course, a lot of people are going to ask immediately, of course, these same APUs are used on the desktop. Can we expect, a similar rapid transition?
Honestly, I can't speculate on what might happen in our roadmap later this year. I know people are interested in APUs, but for now, mobile.
Yep. Okay.
So it seems we've got several different series.
Mm-hmm.
We've got two different series, the H series and the U series. Can you describe for folks who aren't so familiar what the main differences are?
Yeah, so this is I guess a more recent trend in the industry of how to divide the ultra thin, really long battery life notebooks, and those are customarily U series, and then H series from both ourselves and our competitor are typically the more gaming or content creator focused notebooks. But what I think AMD does a little uniquely is that we have those HS models there in that kind of overlap in the middle of those two historic categories. So with AMD, it is possible to get a thin, light, long battery life notebook that also has a flagship GPU inside. And that's one of the things that we do a little differently from our competitor with those HS models. Lots of gray areas in notebooks, but H is historically for gaming, U series for ultra portable.
And then with the HX, can you give us a little bit of detail about those and kind of what the approach is there that AMD is taking?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think people have started to see at CES, I've seen some chatter online, is that all of these high-end gaming notebooks flagship GPUs, beautiful screens, the fastest ones. They have AMD inside. And many of those platforms used to be exclusively our competitors' processors. So the performance we're bringing to the table with the 5000 series flipped those designs. So we're very fast. It's very convincing to our OEM partners. So where do you go from there? How do you go up? One category of notebook that we could not be in last year or the year before, we didn't have a CPU for it, was those notebooks that offer some amount of overclocking. We had no overclocking enabled processor in our portfolio, so we were excluded from those designs. This year, we have the HX brand, and those are multiplier, fabric, and memory unlocked. How much headroom you get, how free you'll be to roam will depend on the laptop vendor, but we can finally be considered for those designs. So not only are you seeing us take the lion's share of the premium gaming notebooks, which gamers have been looking for a long time, we can also go into this even higher category where they begin to look a little bit like a desktop too.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially the memory and the fabric overclocking. I've heard a lot of discussion in enthusiast circles, and people seem to be overlooking that. That's pretty important.
Yeah, well, people, I guess the part B to that is our customers have demanded it, and AMD's mobile business momentum, success, put us in a position where we could satisfy that request. I mean, I get those questions all the time last year. Hey, can you offer a more desktop-like mobile CPU? Can I use overclocking software? Last year, it was no. This year, yeah, it is. It just depends on the laptop.
Are all of these, so we have a question from Javier who asks,
Sure.
Is it true that there will be Zen 2 and Zen 3, or are these all based on Zen 3 architecture?
There are 13 models. 10 of them are based on Zen 3. 3 are based on Zen 2. What's really true of the notebook industry is that it's incredibly price sensitive. And, there's kind of a notebook at every price point you can imagine. And as an ingredient company, what we have to do is make sure we offer as many CPUs as we can to our OEM partners so they can target the right triangle of price, performance, and battery life, yada, yada. So having a couple Zen 2 models in our stack allows us to be more flexible and answer some of these demands from our OEM partners. But I think what people are really wondering about when they ask that question is, how do I tell the two apart? And that's important to us too. So the Zen 3 models will have a special holographic emblem, logo, badge, whatever you want to call it, that you'll see on the notebook or online that'll make it very clear that you're looking at a Zen 3 based notebook. So we didn't want to just mix these architectures together and not tell you. We wanted to make it transparent. I guess part C is that those Zen 2 parts have also received a large number of changes. Battery life is up a bunch, about 2 hours. They have some new power management technology called CPPC. Paul, I know you were curious about that. Those weren't in Zen 2 last year. They're all SMT enabled now. They weren't last year. So we've made a bunch of changes to that core, at a firmware level, at a software level, and in an SoC level, to make sure that they're in lockstep with what the Zen 3 based parts are providing as well, feature-wise.
Yeah, when I was looking over the performance numbers that you guys shared, I was actually surprised that some of them showed that they were much faster than their previous gen counterparts.
Yeah. I mean, we've done large clock speed improvements across the family, just part for part, last year versus this year. GPU, CPU, SMT on, so single thread's gone up proportionally on Zen 2 and Zen 3. GPU clock speeds have gone up. Multi-thread performance goes up. Single thread goes up. So, it's a pretty linear trajectory in terms of performance because of where we put those Zen 2 parts.
And then I think
this slide answers Javier's question.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that we wanted to, be very transparent about what goes where.
And then I think kind of one of the most overlooked things about this that I find interesting and I think is important is the addition of CPPC and how that uses the fastest cores more effectively. Can you kind of give us an overview of how that works? Because that is a first with this series in laptops, correct?
Yeah. So CPPC is a pleasant acronym for Collaborative Power and Performance Control. It's one of those invisible things that makes the magic happen. And so let's talk about a CPU without this technology. A CPU has a range of performance available to it. And if it's not boosting sort of midpoint or below, the OS is in control of the power states on that CPU. So what clock speed is running, how much voltage is it using, what parts of the silicon are turned off, and those decisions get made relatively slowly versus if the CPU was in control. And also, when the OS is in control, there's only discrete steps called power states, and there are big jumps between those states. So what about a workload that kind of falls between the steps? Well, they just either get bumped up to the higher power, wasted battery, or the lower power state, which is lower performance, reduced performance. So CPPC tries to do away with that and create this continuum of performance where the CPU is in control of its voltage and its frequency at all times. The firmware knows better than anyone how that processor is being used. Load, temperature, time and boost, how even on like one thread versus one thread, how significant is that thread in terms of power consumption or CPU usage. With all of that telemetry coming into the processor, we can make much more effective boost decisions, much more effective voltage selections. And the net result is you get longer battery life and more performance at the same time, on top of knowing which cores are fastest or more efficient, so those lightweight workloads go to those cores and the cores can go to sleep faster. So we've had this desktop technology for 2 years now. The Ryzen 5000 series had it, 3000 series had it, and now it's on mobile. But it's much more important on mobile because battery life is always at a premium.
Yeah, that was definitely one of the biggest steps that you guys made recently on the desktop. I mean, It's really been key to a lot of the explosive performance improvements we've seen. So it is really neat to see that come over to the laptop side.
Yeah, it's the 5000 series is really the product of dozens of different optimizations. What components are the vendors choosing in their notebooks? We collaborate heavily, especially as the battery life gets longer and longer on some of these platforms, because it can be even down to what audio controller did you use? Did you use the right voltage regulators on the motherboard? Did you use the right panel? All of these little details have a huge battery life implication on top of the things that AMD can control. So lots of improvement, more to come on all of that this month, but it's been a big effort for the team.
So how does that relate to CTDP? Does the OEM still get to configure the highest level of TDP that the CPU can use?
That's right. Yeah, we so the same interfaces we had last year for peak power level, sustained power level, time and boost, all that stuff is still controllable by the OEM to fit within whatever thermal envelope that chassis has. But beyond that, once the processor knows its operating parameters, that's where boost takes over, right? Our boost technology takes over facilities like Precision Boost and CPPC to make the most of the envelope that we have.
So we have a question, and this is slightly off topic, but is on the topic of AMD CPUs. Razer 2048 asks, for desktop CPUs, are there any plans to improve the Precision Boost Overdrive feature to allow for clock speed improvements?
Well, I'm glad you asked. We just unveiled one of them, actually. It's called Curve Optimizer. It's a new feature. So let me take a step back. Historically, people undervolt their CPU, there are benefits to that. Some have, call it headroom or voltage margin to give, and that makes the CPU run a little cooler, which can help the boost go a little longer or a little higher. The problem with just flat undervolting is when the CPU load is high, it can cause instability. But when the CPU load is low, you may not be getting all the undervolting that is actually available. So we unveiled Curve Optimizer to give you adaptive undervolting. You kind of set this window of undervolting that the CPU understands, and at high load, you get a little bit less of that window, and at low load, you get a little bit more. And the effect of that is that when you turn on some of the other precision boost overdrive features, like more power, higher power limits, and the clock speed override, people are getting pretty healthy clock speed boosts. 5950X, for example, I've seen people hit 5.05, 5.1, just boosting, right? The processor's fully automated. They haven't done anything but turn Curve Optimizer and PBO on, and the processor's taking care of the rest. I have a buddy with a 5800X is hitting 5.025 on his part. So yeah, we've made several improvements in PBO thanks to that Curve Optimizer feature.
Great. Maybe this is a simple question, but will the new platform support USB 4?
No, there's still 3.2 Gen 2. What we find is, well, more on the lines of when you're building a mobile die, every transistor is at a premium, and you have to evaluate, is it worth it, the die area? And because there aren't that many USB 4 devices, for us, it wasn't worth it. So we're still 3.2 Gen 2, which is the majority of the devices out there, or less. I mean, many of them are still 5 gig or even USB 2. So it's all about juggling your resources when you're building a die, and that wasn't one of the balls we wanted to pick up.
Will they support PCIe 4 storage?
Nope, still Gen 3. Same thing, right? It's when you move to a Gen 4 controller on the die, it consumes more power even in a low power condition, right? And what we found is that people value battery life more than they do a really high sustained transfer rate number, which is what Gen 4 can provide. So for us, it was kind of a no-brainer to stay with Gen 3. There's battery life benefits. It allows us to emphasize core performance and GPU performance versus spending power on a controller that people may not use.
Makes sense. So we have a question about, I don't know if this is one you can answer, but we have a question from someone asking about the order queues on AMD's site. Can we get back order queues for the Ryzen 5800X on the AMD store?
Sorry, that's not my team. In fact, I don't deal with logistics or supply at AMD, so unfortunately, I can't answer the question.
I didn't think so. I think the answer, Razor 2048, is hopefully check out our interview with AMD CEO Lisa Su, where she talks about improvements in the supply chain that are coming this year, so that we will see more Zen 3 CPUs in the market, and it'll be easier for folks to order one from a variety of places, not just AMD.com.
And you guys announced that you're bringing the Threadripper Pro series to retail, and we see some pretty insanely equipped motherboards releases over the last few days. Those are pretty exciting. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that and when we'll see those?
Availability should be pretty soon here. I'd have to go back and check my numbers. But I guess the bigger point for us is it kind of fills a small but significant hole in the types of CPUs that we sell to the general public. Threadripper is a wonderful CPU. It does the media entertainment category really well, which wants a ton of cores, doesn't have a huge dependency on memory. But there's an even higher echelon, Paul, We've talked about it before, and it's data science type simulations, so weather and climate forecasting, molecular modeling, brain neuron simulation. A lot of that gets done desk side before it gets shipped off to a server. So that's your classic workstation type system. And that's what Threadripper Pro offers. And not everybody wants to buy one in a pre-built box. Some of them want a DIY. So that was really the driving factor there.
We actually had a chance we just posted a review last weekend of the 3995 WX in the Lenovo.
Hell of a CPU.
That was pretty insane. But the pricing, when I was looking at the pricing, just upgrading from the 12 core to the 64 core through Lenovo, as you can imagine, is, I think it was $8,000 or $9,000 for the upgrade. So it's nice to see those come to retail, so it's a little more accessible for people.
Philip asks, how many PCIe lanes does the Ryzen 5000 Ryzen 5000 mobile processors provide for the discrete GPU?
I don't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I think it's 8. I'd have to double check. But it is the same as the Ryzen 4000 series. So if you have those specs available and handy, those are the same for the 5000 series as well.
Yep. I'm assuming we don't have an answer for this, but just because a person said it, I will put out that this person says they are a 3970X user and they want to know about new Threadrippers, which I'm sure you can't talk about on released products.
That's true.
The Threadripper Pros.
Threadripper Pro.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There.
But I can see that we have some Threadripper stands here.
Yeah. I have no need for a Threadripper in my daily life. Like, I can't use one. It's too much performance for me. But truth be told, it is one of my favorite products at AMD because it's so ridiculous. I just love it. It's hardware for hardware's sake, and it's great.
Yes, I'm getting a message that in March is when we should expect the Threadripper Pros.
You just built a 5950X system, I think I noticed.
I did. Yeah.
You're quite the memory overclocker. I'm always kind of surprised at how well you've done. Have you had a chance to do any memory overclocking on 5950X?
A little bit. This morning, I got it to boot at 2000 F clock. System was clearly unhappy with my settings because the BIOS was moving at like a quarter frame a second. But I can post. I can get to the BIOS. That means it's possible. So I will figure it out. My situation is a bit unique. I have 4 8-gig DIMMs, which is a little harder to run. They're Samsung A2 PCBs, so they should be capable of high clocks. But it's experimentation land. 2000, not every chip can do it. Hope mine can. We'll see.
Yeah, we had a really good 5900X that could run it all day, and it was amazing simple. Right.
That's
But
awesome.
with the 5950, I had to go back to 1800. But I mean, still, the results in our reviews speak for themselves.
I think so.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
So we have another question. Javier says that he likes to undervolt or to limit the PPC to have a quiet system. Is it possible to do this with the 5000 series or only on the HX models?
It's going to depend on what hooks the laptop's BIOS makes available. At the end of the day, the CPU is capable of quite a lot, but on a laptop, it comes down to what is exposed by the vendor in the BIOS, right? At that point, it becomes what does the appliance give you rather than the CPU, where we're just an ingredient. So, more research on platforms required for that one throughout the year.
Yeah, no doubt.
With the HX, will you have Ryzen Master software? Will that work with the HX series?
I think what's going to happen is they'll probably end up taking the SDK that runs Ryzen Master and building their own, vendor version of the tool that kind of offers the limits that the laptop vendor is willing to provide. And at the end of the day, that's our role as an ingredient technology or an enabler in the system.
Cool.
Great. Well, was there anything else, Robert, that you wanted to add about this week's AMD announcements?
I think 2 things. There's a lot of new CPU announcements happening. last month, this month. I think AMD has done something really unique in a time where our competitor is making people choose between 4 cores, better process, higher clocks, or older process, 8 cores. You're making big trade-offs there, big trade-offs. And they're different model numbers, different sockets, different types of systems. AMD is giving you 1 socket, 1 family, and it scales to 8 cores, and it has great single thread too. It's a very easy choice. And that's a roadmap we've been building towards for 5 or 6 years now. And I hope people see the elegance. I hope people see how simple it is compared to all the other offerings that are showing up this year, especially in a year where everybody's kind of stuck at home. And for many, the laptop is maybe the only computer that they have. Like maybe they don't have their work desktop anymore. Some of us on this call have the luxury of having awesome desktops at home, but not everybody does.
Yep.
Right? So the fact that we can take that 8-core device and stick it in a really thin notebook and give people this huge continuum of performance from one SoC design is a massive technical achievement, and I hope people see it.
Especially how fast you did it. You guys had 75 laptops with the first generation.
That's right.
100 with the second, and now 150.
That's right.
A lot of options.
And that's just 5000 series, right? There will be other, mid-cycle refreshes of 4000 series notebooks as well, right? That would also come to market. So, we're growing 50% year over year, and that should really tell you something about both the demand and the performance. It's going to be an awesome 21. We've got some cool gaming notebooks coming. I'm excited.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we were very impressed with the Zephyrus in 2020.
Yeah,
that was one of the best notebooks of the whole year, and that was powered by Ryzen. So we can only look forward to what's coming this year. Well, thank you, Robert, so much for joining us. Thank you, Paul, and thank you to everyone who was watching and listening. Please if you like these shows, please visit youtube.com/tomshardware and hit the subscribe button so we can let you know about more of them, because we got a whole bunch more today and ongoing. So we will see you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Hope to see
you.
you.
Paul, thanks. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you too.